guys, it's Jessii Vee. So today we are going to be continuing our awesome movie series, and I thought it would be fun to talk about Mary Poppins today. Now, for the most part of today's video, we're going to be talking about the very first Mary Poppins. So the classic Disney Mary Poppins with Julie Andrews that we all know and love. I know it was before a lot of our times, like it was before my time even, but I know as a kid I still watched it constantly. I know all of the songs. In fact, the other day I literally had a spoonful of sugar songs stuck in my head constantly.
Just a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. The medicine go down.
Now that's gonna be stuck in your heads. Anyways, that movie is such a classic one, and I always used to watch it at my grandma's house. I have so many memories when I think about it. But when you watch it as an adult, or when you watch it a lot later on in your life, you notice things that you didn't really notice when you were a kid. And I'm gonna go over what those things are with you, but a lot of it is kind of dark and kind of very relatable and realistic. Because when you're a kid, you think everything's just fine and dandy, and you're watching Mary Poppins and you're like,
oh, she's so pretty, she can sing really well.
But when you're older, you look at it and you're like, darn, I mean, that's deep. So yeah, today we're gonna be going over some of the things that you may not have noticed in Mary Poppins when you were younger. Now, I did watch the new Mary Poppins with Emily Blunt, so at the very end of this video, I'm gonna sort of compare the two and tell you what I thought of the new movie, but we're not gonna get there just yet, so hold your horses. Also, before we start, I'm only going to be doing 2 more days of videos with this backdrop. So today's video and the next one you're gonna see is the last videos with this backdrop behind me. So I'm gonna be announcing the winner early next week. So if you want to win it, now is your chance. Go over to my other channel called V Vlogs. All you have to do is subscribe. The link to the channel is in the description of this video. And then all you have to do secondly is go comment on the video called How Bulldogs Open Gifts. Tell me your favorite part of that video and you will be entered. So yeah, just 2 more days. 2 more days to enter for this one. And the next backdrop I have is so exciting. Like, I cannot wait to show you guys. Woo! Okay, so here we go. Things only adults will notice in Mary Poppins. It turns out that there are a lot of moments in this movie that go over your head as a kid. If you rewatch it closely as an adult though, you might be surprised to see that the movie is actually a little bit darker than you remember. So we're gonna go through these points and they're not in any particular order, but we're gonna start off with the character Bert. So when you're watching the movie, you kind of notice that Bert seems to be everywhere. We see him at the beginning of the film performing as a one-man band for spare change. But then he also has a side job like being a chimney sweeper or a sidewalk chalk artist, and then we see him being a kite seller. So why is that? Why is he everywhere all of the time doing different things, selling different things, having different jobs? Is he just a free spirit who can't be shackled to a traditional job? Is he taking on these extra jobs because he's not making enough money to make ends meet? It's weird because when I watched this movie as a kid, I never noticed that he was doing a million different things. When I think back to Bert, I always just think of him as a chimney sweeper. So watching the movie as an adult, Bert becomes a really relatable character because plenty of adults know the struggle of living paycheck to paycheck. So you definitely have to admire the guy's work ethic. And I mean, it's so true, like clearly he's very dedicated. The next point is that being a chimney sweeper is actually a huge health risk. In the movie, they make his job seem like such a fun time. You guys probably remember them dancing on the rooftops of houses with their cleaning tools. They were singing, having a great time, but little do kids know that these guys regularly breathe in black smoke that completely coats their lungs. In fact, a lot of people died from doing that back then. Going in and out of people's chimneys definitely does a harsh number on you. And when you're a kid watching it, you're just like,
oh, it's a musical, they're singing, having a great time.
But there's actually a really dark and harsh reality to it. The next point is that the neighbor's house is a safety hazard. The Banks family lives next to a delusional man who thinks his house is a ship. He literally turned the roof of his house into a boat. Not only that, but he actually regularly fires cannons, which causes the neighbors' houses to shake. I mean, why has nobody reported this guy to the police? And how much damage has these cannonballs caused? I mean, they have to be landing somewhere. They don't just like take off into the sky and just disappear. They land like in the middle of the streets. And considering Considering that they're being fired in what appears to be a fairly densely populated area, there have to have been some injuries, if not deaths, from being hit by cannon fire. Surely there must have been at least one neighbor who would have put a stop to this, right? It's just hard to believe that a calm neighborhood would be totally okay with their houses shaking all times of the day. Imagine if that was happening in your neighborhood. I feel like your parents would put a stop to it right when it started. I mean, those scenes always really confused me as a child, and I think in my child brain I actually thought it was a ship or something. I think I was just so confused by what he was doing. Like, is it actually a boathouse? Like, what's happening? I'd always be like, why is there a boat in the middle of the neighborhood? The next point is that Bert has the worst accent ever. So I've actually heard about people complain about this quite a lot, and I must admit I never noticed his terrible accent as a child, but I'm also Canadian, so I guess his bad accent didn't really register to me. This one is probably more noticeable to English children who grew up watching the movie, and most American kids were probably fooled by it, because when you're a kid, Bert seems like a funny and totally believable Englishman with a Cockney accent. But when you're an adult and you watch the movie, you realize that no one in real life actually talks like Bert. In fact, Bert's horrendous accent has been criticized for decades since Mary Poppins was released. And even the actor who played him, Dick Van Dyke, acknowledges how bad it is. He knows that he was doing it terribly. And what's pretty funny is that in 2017, Van Dyke received BAFTA's Britannia Award for Excellence in Television. This is what he said during his speech. "I appreciate this opportunity to apologize to the members of BAFTA for inflicting on them the most atrocious Cockney accent in the history of cinema." But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's entirely his fault, because he also said that none of the British people working on set during the movie said anything to him. Like, they never told him it was wrong. So I guess he didn't realize how terrible it was until people started mentioning it. The next one is, why doesn't anybody ever question Mary Poppins? So yes, Jane and Michael are full of mischief, but we all know they're just acting out because they just want love and attention, right? Because their parents really don't give them any attention at all. So it does make sense that they quickly become enamored with Mary Poppins, who seems to be very kind to them. But what doesn't really make sense to me is why no adults really question her about her magical powers. How were they not more skeptical when a woman literally flies in from the sky? Even Mr. Banks is weirdly mesmerized and doesn't question Mary Poppins when presented with evidence that she's wielding some otherworldly powers. Did she just like cast a spell over the entire family? I just felt like everyone was acting like it was totally normal. The next question that I think everybody always wonders is, where did Mary Poppins get her powers from? You might not have thought of this when you were a kid, but I feel like when you're older watching the movie, you sort of wonder like, but where did she get her powers from? What's her background? What's her history? We really have no background knowledge about her at all. I mean, she doesn't have a magic wand that she casts spells with, so how does she do it? In fact, she doesn't really acknowledge that what she's doing is out of the ordinary. She acts like it's totally normal to be able to clean up a room by snapping her fingers. Like, are magical nannies just a normal thing in that universe? Where does she get her enchanted items, like her bottomless bag of stuff? Is she a witch? What is she? It's actually a little frightening when you think about it, because Mary worked her way into the Banks' household by blowing away all of the other applicants with a gust of wind. Do you guys remember that part as a kid when all of the nannies are lined up to get interviewed and she just literally blows them away? Literally. Just think about how much damage she could do if she ever decided to use her powers for evil, because she clearly has a lot of it, so that's kind of scary to think about. The next point is, who the heck is Uncle Albert? When you're watching it as a kid, Uncle Albert seems to be like a funny character, but I feel like as an adult it raises a lot of questions. So he seems to be well known to Mary and Bert, but it's not clear if he's actually someone's uncle, or is it just his nickname. He doesn't seem to have any magical powers, but he suffers from an affliction that causes him to float to the ceiling when he laughs too much. And then what's even creepier is that he passes on that illness to anybody who's around him. And while this scene is really comical to kids, I know a lot of kids laugh and they find this so hilarious, I think he's actually a really tragic character. Think about it, he's very lonely because the only thing that makes him stop laughing, literally the only thing, is when Mary Poppins say they have to leave. He literally starts crying because they're about to leave him. I don't know, I know when I watched that scene as a kid, Uncle Albert always gave me the creeps. Like, I always felt really unsettled by him. Like, he's so random in the movie. The next question is, what is really going on with Mary Poppins and Bert? Like, can we just ask ourselves that question for a second? I feel like they're both very mysterious characters. We know very little about their backgrounds or their lives before they met the Banks family. And it seems evident that they've known each other for a while, but we never know exactly how. When you're a kid and you're watching the movie, I feel like you don't really pick up on that romantic tension, but when you're an adult watching it, you're like, wow, it seems like these guys love each other. Why aren't they acting on it? What's their background of their love story? So many questions, you know what I mean? Are Bert and Mary secretly a couple but hiding it from the children? Are they in love but unable to be together for some reason? Or is Mary really just a heartless person who's toying with Bert's emotions and stringing him along just for fun? I feel like their relationship is so complicated and is never really explained. And there's actually a really creepy conspiracy theory to follow up with that. And the theory is that Mary Poppins was actually Bert's nanny when he was a kid. Take that in. There is a lyric that Bert is singing that I'm gonna read to you guys that kind of proves that theory. This is what he sings. Because I was afraid to speak when I was just a lad, my father gave my nose a tweak and told me I was bad. But then one day I learned a word that saved my aching nose, the biggest word I ever heard, and this is how it goes. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. So who's the one who came up with that word? It was Mary Poppins. So the theory is that he was having a really rough childhood. His father wasn't treating him well. He was very, very shy, and then suddenly Mary Poppins came into his life and she was singing all these funny songs with him just like she's doing with the children, because I can't even say it. It's a magical word that only Mary Poppins uses. So there's really no way he could have learned it as a kid unless she taught it to him. And because she never ages, Bert eventually grew up and fell in love with her for changing his life. And also there's another clue at the beginning of the movie that kind of proves this theory as well. In the very beginning, you see Bert say, "Winds in the east, mist coming in, like something is brewing, about to begin. Can't put my finger on what lies in store, but I feel what's to happen all happened before." AKA, it happened when he was a kid and it's happening again now with her coming back, flying down from the sky. Also, if you think about it, Bert never questions Mary's powers. Not when she's flying, and not when she's turning a cloud of smoke into a magic staircase, and not even when she bends the law of space, time, and physics to transport them to a magical chalk universe. It just seems to be all normal to him, and he's just going along with it. He's having a great time because he knew all of her tricks and her magic from when he was a kid. It just doesn't seem likely that they would have just randomly met on the street. They just don't seem like strangers. You know what I mean? And I actually do believe that conspiracy, because I know a lot of the time conspiracies are crazy and out there and you're like, no. But this one really does make sense. And the next point is that London is incredibly grim in the movie. Whenever I watched it as a kid, I felt like it was so gray and dark and dreary and gloomy. And honestly, when I was little, I thought that that's how London actually just was in real life, because I didn't know any better. To children, Mary Poppins is a film full of whimsical delights. There's singing, dancing, magic, and bright, colorful characters, so it's easy to overlook the grim setting when you're a kid. But as an adult, you realize that the London the Banks family lives in is actually pretty dismal. Everything there is just dark and drab, rather than the bustling city that it actually is. Because I've been to London in real life as an adult, and it's a beautiful place, and it's full of people and crowds and just a lot's going on there, but in the movie, like, it almost seems like you barely see people around. I mean, it's no surprise to me that Jane and Michael were so upset and so down all the time because their atmosphere was so down. But that makes sense to the movie plot, because then the happy thing is Mary Poppins coming to be with them. So that's like their joy in the movie, you know what I mean? So I guess the whole atmosphere makes sense, but I feel like as an adult watching back, it seems even darker than I remember it. Anyways though guys, those are all of the points that I'm gonna make about the older Mary Poppins, like the very first movie. And yeah, so I actually saw the new movie about a week ago, and I did think it was a pretty good movie. I mean, I feel like the older Mary Poppins was geared towards a bigger audience of people. Like, I feel like little kids could watch the old one and older kids can watch the old one, but I feel like this new movie was really geared to like really like young kids, just in my opinion. I just didn't feel like I was fully immersed in the movie because it was so like geared to a younger audience, which makes sense. I mean, it's Mary Poppins, it's a kid's movie. So if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably rate it like a 7 out of 10, which isn't a terrible score, but I don't feel like I'd buy the movie and like watch it over and over again, but I would for the older Mary Poppins. But that could just be like the nostalgia in in me that likes the older one. I don't know, guys. I feel like if I had to compare the two, I'll always go back to the original. But that's just my opinion. Definitely let me know down below what you guys think of the new movie and the old movie. And if there's any points about the old movie that I didn't mention, definitely comment them down below as well. And yeah, before I go, I am gonna mention the new members of my channel, so give me 1 second for that. But I also just hope you guys are really enjoying this movie series. I'm trying to jump back and forth between animated movies and like real life movies. What are they called? Live action movies. There you go. But I'm always open to suggestions of what movies you want me to cover because I like looking at like the dark aspects of film. It just freaks me out, but it also intrigues me. All right, so here we go. We have Yuki Senpai Productions, Maddie Games, Amy Carter, Jenny Lee, Blue Trap, Brionna DeSantos, TLK Vitani, Star of Guidance, Ariane Olick, Warren Lancaster, Kiwi Goodman, Savannah Marie, Somebody, Faith Allen Murray, Emily Schreiber, XX Cupcake Lover, Stephanie McLaughlin, Gemma Mickelfish, Dark in Essence, and I think that's all for the new ones. So thank you guys so much again for becoming members. It honestly means the world to me. If you are not, I love you just as much. Thank you to everyone for your support, and I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!